Welcome everyone who is currently on. We are starting momentarily this broadcast. We were going to give about 30 seconds for people to continue to finish their login, and we are again excited to have you join. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're excited to have you here. By way of introduction, my name is David Lundgren. I'm one of the senior enterprise sales representatives for InEight. I've spent 22 years helping organizations like yours be able to tackle the challenges of the construction life cycle. And we also have Dave Wagner on the line as well. He's our Vice President of Industry Solutions. He brings 25 years of experience in building and designing various software related to the construction industry. That includes Document as well, and we're lucky to have him as our presenter today. As a point or as a quick introduction, prior to jumping in, just want to let everyone in attendance know that we've started a series of short overviews, and these short overviews are intended to provide people like yourselves with the opportunity to take a glimpse into some of the exciting technologies that we have here at InEight. And today specifically is going to be a focus upon our InEight Document solution. This will be an opportunity for you to see it in action, to see it live. And additionally, at the conclusion, we'll provide the ability for kind of an answer session where we'll be able to address questions that you have. That being said, if you look at the upper right corner of your screen, there should be a box where you can type in questions. So we'll be presenting live, and as that happens, questions may come to your mind. Go ahead and type them to the right. We'll track them, and then at the end, we'll go through the questions and hopefully be able to get through all of them and make sure that that we can address them satisfactorily for everyone on the phone. So again, make sure you're submitting those questions. Our resources at InEight are dedicated to providing a complete solution to every phase of the project lifecycle. So that being the case, we understand that there's got to be a tangible benefit. There's got to be an adoption that makes sense. So the second important thing to mention to you guys is that our technology is intended to be a technology that can work out of the gate, but it can also be a technology to be implemented over time. So it's not necessarily an all or nothing approach. It's more of a scenario of modules and being able to take an approach of crawl, walk, run. So what we've found is that organizations tend to gain the greatest benefit by implementing several solutions, maybe not all of them at once, but it could be, certainly as few as one solution, but there's great benefit to having two or more, because then they start working together. And so the idea here is that you can see that it's a one integrated platform, which is sort of our unique offering to the market. And we're excited again to have you seeing what we're sharing today, which is InEight Document. And so we're now going to dig into those capabilities. And with that, Dave, I'm going to turn the time over to you. Again, Dave Wagner, our document solutions expert today, to take over. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. So as Dave mentioned, we're going to focus on today is that big orange box, which is 3 from the right. And the real goal of InEight Document is to help you manage all your project documents. Because what we found is all too often that project documentation tends to get managed in siloed areas. Plans and specs, maybe you're sitting out on your network P drive or your project drive. Your emails are bundled out in Outlook. Transmittals, submittals, RFIs, maybe you're sitting in a package, a cloud-based storage package like Box or Dropbox or SharePoint. And who knows where your photos is? Unfortunately, all too likely sitting on someone's iPad or iPhone, waiting to be found at some point in the future. And when you have all this information separated and dispersed across all these different systems, it raises a whole host of problems. I mean, to start with, it makes collaboration and communication very difficult across the extended project team. It's hard to make sure that all of your team members are using the latest documents, regardless of where they are, whether it's in the office or out in the field. You have issues with having to enter the same piece of information redundantly in different systems and wasting valuable time. It can become very difficult just to find a piece of information. A study came out not that long ago that estimated the average construction professional spends 5.5 hours every week just searching for documents. And finally, when you have all this information sort of spread apart, it's very difficult to have a single audit trail, a single place where you can see exactly who did what and when they did it. So the goal that we're going to look at today with InEight Document is to remove a lot of those problems and those obstructions and bring all this data into a single source of project truth, not a bunch of organizational-based systems, but a single project. And when you do that, it affords you the ability to much easier find the information that you're looking for, to organize it a way that you do within your organization, to share it with the extended project team, to audit everything that's ever happened, and maybe most valuable of all, to create linkages, to be able to tie all these different pieces of information together in a logical fashion, to be able to understand the the email that was created that helped launch the RFI, that was tied to the 3 photos that were taken at the time they were trying to get the question answered, tied back to the original plan. And to create these relationships, these links as we call them, is ultimately one of the most valuable features that you can get from a document control and management system. So without any further ado, let's jump out of the presentation and we're going to jump into InEight Document. So at its heart, InEight Document is a cloud-based system that is accessible via the browser, which is what we're looking at now, or via various mobile apps. And we support iPhones, iPads, Android phones, and Android tablets. And what its real focus is managing your project documents, and not just your plans and your specs, all your project documents, your emails, your plans, your specs, your packages, your submittals, your RFIs, your photos, all of that information in a single place. We capture it, we help you manage and organize it, we help you distribute it out to the greater team, track everything that was ever touched, and then ultimately also analyze what's going on with your project documents so you can get a better feel for what's going on in your project, which is sort of at the heart of what we're looking at right now, which is the dashboard. So the dashboard gives me, as an individual user, a custom view of what's important to me on the project. Which of these various modules do I care about? What's going on with those modules? You know, I can look at various elements to see exactly what's important to me and what my statistics are, so I know what's going on the project itself. But the real gut, or the core to the system, is the document register. And here's where you're actually managing that total list of documents that are on the system itself. So what you're going to see is a log of every controlled document. And for each of these documents, you'll also notice that there are these various pieces of attribute information. So the way InEight Document behaves is you as a customer can define what attributes you want for what projects. Different projects can have different attributes depending on what's important to you. I've worked with customers that have had as few as 3 or 4 attributes per document, and as some that have had more than 50 attributes. But the value of that attributes is it's going to allow us to find that information and organize it in a way that you typically can't when you just throw a document up on a file system. So which brings up the question, well, how do documents get in here in the first place then? And you've got a number of methods. We have integrations with a variety of different tools. You can capture individual documents, but you can also capture documents in batches. And the other piece that's critical is that this attribute information doesn't all have to be hand entered. We provide a number of tools to either extract attributes out of file names, pull them out of headers, out of PDFs and other Office type files, as well as OCR title blocks on plans to extract that data and make sure it's put into the overall archive. Another critical element is, up to this point in time, I've been keep talking about documents and not files. And there's a big reason for that, because we manage it at a document level. We allow you to revise and track at a document piece of information. However, there may be multiple files that represent that document. I may have a PDF version of the file that I use for distribution out to the greater project team. There may be a DWG file that I'm managing that we use as part of the revision where we're editing it or making changes to a document. And you can see out here on the right, for every document we have, you can essentially associate one or more different file types with that document. So I mentioned a little earlier, we have a full revisioning scheme. Check-in, check-out is available, and then you can actually go out and define workflows that you can assign a document to, and then that document will flow through a predefined workflow and track that information and track everyone that's responsible. So if we go out and look at our Manage Workflow screen, this is a list of all the documents that are currently queued up to go into the workflow process. If we look here, we can see within the various companies we're working with, you can assign different people to the workflow, both internal within your organization or external outside the organization. And then you can define different sequences, define durations, whether they're optional, whether it's an either or situation, to define these somewhat complex parallel workflows or very simple sequential workflows, with the ultimate goal of having that accountability to make sure that that document is going through a defined process. You're tracking each step along the way until that document's been approved and can be distributed out to the greater project team. So we're going to go back to the overall register one more time and see a list of all the documents. And when you do have these documents, by default, we are viewing what we refer to as all the latest unrestrained documents, which essentially is saying latest, meaning the most current, and unrestrained, meaning they've gone through that review process we just talked about and are available to everyone. So now I'm only looking at those current documents. And with a couple clicks, I can then transmit that information out through a transmittal. The transmittal packages those documents up and doesn't actually send the documents themselves, but really sends out links, secure links to all the documents to everyone on the project team that you're interested in. You can define who you want to send it to, any responses, reason for issues, also get read request receipts and notifications on revision to keep track of who's seen and what they've seen, and when a document is revised, it's already been transmitted. So I mentioned earlier this concept of searching, this idea that we can waste over a half a day a week just searching for information. And what we've done with InEight Document is put a system in place that allows you as an individual to search the way you feel most comfortable searching. So for some people, I like to think of this as Google searching. You can go in and search on a word or a combination of words, and it's going to find every document that has that word, level in this case, that's part of the attributes of the document. Or you can set the project up to actually physically search the text in the document to bring all those back. Another common search that people like is to put things into an organizational folder. So you can create a folder structure that you assign documents to, and this is no different than Microsoft Explorer, which you would be doing out on your network, and then you can peruse through the folder tree to find the information you're looking for. However, what we also do is combine the best of this folder concept and also leverage all this attribute information that we talked about earlier that's associated with each document to provide you even a better way of organizing your folders. You can create what we call dynamic folders. And a dynamic folder is going to automatically generate based on an organizational level that you define. So let's say, for instance, I've created one here where I want to rearrange my folder to start now with the document discipline and then the status. So watch what happens on the left. When I select this, you'll notice the whole folder structure changes. And now we start with every discipline that I have a document that is associated with it based on these attributes. And as you would imagine, if I click down, I can now see the different types. So in this case, I only have drawings as part of my electrical, but I can now see very quickly a list of all of my electrical documents that are drawings. And I can create as many or as few of these dynamic structures as I want to help my team find the information that they need. We'll talk about one more search mechanism in just a second, but to show that, what I'd like to do next, though, is actually go in and look at an individual document itself. So when we take a peek at a document, one of the things you're going to see now is all the attribute information that was defined earlier. You can also see any of the files that are associated with this document, and then you can view the document by clicking on the file viewer. So our system includes, by default, a file viewing system that views over 250 file types that you can use for viewing and redlining. Here we can see the view. You can also go in and have a full set of annotation tools that you use and commenting tools that is critical as being part of that review process as well. We also have measurement tools that you can use to measure the document. For those of you that are big Bluebeam fans, and it is a great product, we also have an integration with Bluebeam Review and Studio. So if you want to synchronize the documents you manage within InEight Document, you can continue to use Bluebeam as your viewer or workflow tool of choice. As I mentioned, we keep a full track of all the comments that are associated with this document. And we also keep track of all the other project items in the project that this is linked to. So in this case, you can see we've actually linked this document to 2 emails, 6 other documents in the system, and 3 forms. In this case, these are some of our RFIs. So earlier when I was talking about different ways to search, this also becomes a very, very valuable way to search. For instance, if I'm having trouble finding a specific email, but I know the document that it was related to, I can find the document first. Now I'm only looking at 2 emails as opposed to maybe hundreds of emails to see what the right email is that I'm interested in. We are a secure-based system, so you can track and define who has access to what documents, either on an individual or a role-based level. And for that matter, we also allow you to secure who has access to different functions and capabilities and modules in the system. We also maintain a full audit trail. So at what exact point in time someone did something and what version of the document they did it against. So these are a few of the primary highlights of what we refer to as sort of the document, the core document piece. But we also have a number of other modules, including our email module. So this is essentially its own email system that you can use for managing project email. And this is critical because all too often, most companies use Outlook. And Outlook is a great product, no doubt, but it's really at an organizational level. You're managing everything through the people that you work with and not necessarily the people on the project team. So what we've done is create an email system that is project focused that you can use for collecting and capturing all that project information at a project level. The other nice feature is when you go out and create a new email, you actually can define different email templates. So when you think about Outlook, Outlook is mostly, it's a single template, a to, a from, a subject, a body, a few flags, some attachments, but you really don't have a lot of flexibility. Within this system, you can actually create different email templates. So let's take a look at memorandum, for instance, and define additional attributes that you want to capture as part of this email send. So you're going to see that the base looks pretty much just like Outlook does, with a to and a CC and a subject and a body. But now when you're doing the to, you're not selecting from people within your organization, you're selecting from people on the project. You can go out and look at the various companies that you define on the project and pick from those to send the email to. What makes it different as well is you can define additional attributes like the discipline maybe the email is associated with, the area of a project. And all of these lists, these drop downs are definable by your organization. Now, I would love to tell you that every one of our customers just eats this up and they've stopped using Outlook, and that's just not the case. Everyone is still going to continue to use Outlook. So with InEight, we provide a default Outlook plugin, something that allows you to file your emails or create new emails directly from Outlook using the same capabilities we just looked at, where you can select from these email templates and you can actually view and access in its own Outlook folder a list of all your project emails for all the different projects that you belong. So we have a number of individual users that never leave Outlook. They never even go into our interface. That is where they manage all that email distribution, but they do know that by filing it from Outlook into our system, they're keeping that overall project of record in place. We did briefly look at transmittals earlier when I showed you how you could select a couple of documents from your register and send those out to the project team. But what I wanted to show you is, well, what does one of those transmittals look like once it's sent? So here's an example of what a transmittal would look like, distributed via the email client, and it's going to tell you a little bit about the transmittal and the information around it specifically to you, but in this case can give you links to download all the information and acknowledge the fact that you've got the package. You can also define these to make each individual document downloadable as well, and we'll track all this information as part of the overall project. We also have a full tasking tool that you can use to manage your task, a full gallery tool for managing your photos, but I want to spend a little bit more time on is the forms module. So we talked earlier about document workflows, about taking a document and pushing it through a workflow. This part of the module is what we use for tracking processes. Document-related processes like RFIs and submittals that need to be tracked through the extended project team. And you can essentially go in and create as many of these different types of form templates as you want. This one is a relatively simple project that just has an RFI and a submittal, but I can create others for meeting minutes, for ECNs, or anything else that I need where I'm collecting a specific set of data that needs to go through a defined workflow with my extended project team to get an answer, to get an approval, or anything else along those lines. So if we take a look at one of these RFIs that's already been created, you'll see that the RFI form is really composed of two major components. One is the information that you want to track. Now, we have literally hundreds of example form templates that you can start with, but ultimately it's up to you and your organization what data that you want to track, what data you want to capture for, in this case, for this RFI. So this is specific, in this case, to this project. But we can capture the information, we can assign the people that we were going to make part of this, and then we can go in similarly to what we looked at earlier and define various workflow nodes, whether it's the discipline manager asking them to make comments on the RFI, the project engineer, and we'll step through this process tracking all this information along the way. InEight Document comes with a full notification system that you can configure to notify various people at every step along everything we do as to what's going on. So in this case, you can notify people when it's their turn in the workflow process, notify the project coordinator if someone is late in the RFI process or when their turn is coming up, or pretty much everything in between. We also have a full set of standard reports that can be used across our various modules for accessing and managing data. You can also work with our team to create your own reports or modify these existing reports to get exactly the look and the feel and the colors and the logos that your team is looking for. So this concludes our demo overview on InEight Document, and at this time, I'm going to send it back to Dave. Actually, before send it back to Dave. Dave, all yours.
There, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect, okay. So thank you, Dave, appreciate that. We've been helping organizations across the globe essentially improve their predictability, their performance. And that goes across owners, that goes across contractors to have improved collaboration. And that gives them better project visibility. It gives them ability to really understand and see every phase of a project life cycle. So with what we've shown now, why don't we jump into some questions that we've seen. And again, there may be some more questions. Feel free, anyone who's on the phone, feel free to go up into the upper right, add any additional questions, but I'll go ahead and start with the ones we currently have. Dave, the first question is how does your product handle integrations with other solutions?
So yeah, that's a great question. What we feel is most important is to allow our customers to use what are the best-in-class solutions out on the market space today. So the way that we can accomplish that is really threefold. The first thing is where we recognize that there is a best-in-class solution that maybe is not what we are best in class in, then we create a standard integration with that solution. I talked about a few of them earlier. We talked about Microsoft Outlook from an email perspective. I talked about Bluebeam as a view and markup tool. But another great example could be Microsoft SharePoint. If you're storing information in SharePoint, you can create a two-way synchronization back and forth between SharePoint and our system. So we have a handful of those types of predefined integrations. We also have a robust API, a tool set that a developer can use to create an integration with our system and someone else. And then finally, we don't try to hide the data that you put into our system. We don't lock it down so you can never get it out again. I didn't go to it in any detail during the demo, but virtually every single module that we went into has an export option, and you can use that export option to export data out, typically into Excel, but there are other formats available as well, and then use that data as you see fit.
Awesome. This is a good question. How does your product handle getting information out of your solution?
So so I touched upon that first part of it a second ago, which is the export, where you can go in, select either everything in a registry or do a search and pick specific things, and then you can export that out. And the beauty of it is it's just not exporting a physical document, it's exporting all that metadata that is associated with that document as well. Now, that being said, we also have an archiving tool, and you can use that archiving tool to create searchable standalone media that you would typically maybe put on a CD or a DVD or a standalone drive, and that you could use to deliver to someone else as well. So that's not only going to have all the data on it, but we're also going to give you this little no connection necessary, essentially free tool that sits on top of all that archived data that someone can use in a read-only mode to find the information that they're looking for.
Cool. Let's see, we've got, does the solution support retention schedules?
You can define an attribute within the system. We talked about the flexibility and the variability of the attributes that you can create for documents, and define a retention piece of information. And then when a document comes in, define that retention schedule. And then, as I mentioned earlier, use the searching against that attribute to decide what it is that you want to export out of the system in retention mode.
Awesome. And then I've got one more regarding reporting. Does your solution provide reporting?
Sure. So we took a look at the reporting very briefly earlier, and we've got about 130 standard reports. There's probably been, over the course of this product's history, which now goes back over 20 years, thousands of different report types that have been created in our overall services library. And these reports can be used for at either a manager level, an analysis level, an individual level, to know exactly what's going on with your project.
Awesome. I know I said that was the last one. We continue to have more coming through, so let me continue. Here's another one. Can operations managers review or walk through InEight estimate bids? So that's a little bit of a different take, but if you want to take that one.
So Estimate is another one of the products that is in our portfolio, and typically, we'd be using the Estimate tool natively to walk through the information. Now, that all being said, though, we do, of course, offer the capability to take the estimates and put those into the document management tool as a record, as something that could then be used and viewed and accessed more for informational purposes as part of the overall document registry.
But I think for clarification to your point, you typically would do that in our estimate piece.
Right, right.
Again.
Now, and I apologize, the other sort of way I could look at the question too starts to get in is once you've created the estimate, you may want to put something out for bid. And although I did not show it during our demonstration, we also have a full invitation to bid capability based in the solution. It's somewhat similar to the transmittal that we looked at, where you can go out and pick the documents that you want to make part of the bid. The difference is instead of the information being directly mailed to the invitees that you want to bid, we actually provide them their own little web-based tool that they can use for reviewing the documents, reviewing the bid information, asking questions, and then eventually providing a response back to the bid into an InEight document. And then within an InEight document, you can then start to analyze the information, and then with the help of estimate, make your decisions on who you want to award to.
And I've got another one here that says, is there a setup on permissions or roles giving read or write access to data?
So yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, absolutely. So you can basically define full access, edit access. You can define what you're referring to as like a view access only, and that is very typical that a certain person or a certain role more likely would be assigned where they only have access to view the information and not edit it.
And then it looks like another question came in from the same person, kind of taking that to another level, asking about the granularity within the system. So how granular is it? Can files and folders be shared outside the product?
Yeah.
So can you go about? Yep.
Yeah, so exactly. So you can share information out to the document level with specific people outside the organization, because we view a project as being composed of people from a variety of different organizations across engineering and architecture and construction and the client and the owner. We don't limit what you can do in terms of sharing that information. We also don't charge based on extra users. That we view the people that need to have access to the information should have access to the information. And it's really at the discretion of the group that's managing the administration of that project, what each member on the team or what each role or what each company on the team is allowed to do, is allowed to see, is allowed to have access to.
Fantastic. As far as I can tell, I think that, well, we've definitely addressed the questions that were typed in. Inevitably, look, guys, we know that you probably have additional questions, and that's not certainly not a problem. If you take a look on your screen, if you have additional requests, and I have some here asking for demonstrations and so forth, and that's fantastic. Any requests, be it questions, demonstrations, whatever it may be, go ahead on your screen, and my email is there. It's David.Lundgren, that's L-U-N-D green, just like the color, at InEight.com. And then my phone number, don't be shy to call me. I'm going to be called as well. It's 480-203-4343. So that gives anyone else who has not had their questions answered or something comes up after or you want a demo, please reach out. Let's kind of talk about, remember I talked about a cadence of how we're kind of sharing our technology. And so we have another session that's coming up August 18th. And so that session is going to be, it's a Tuesday. It'll be just like today, 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific. And we will be doing InEight Schedule. That's actually an exciting piece. It's a really neat technology. So hopefully everyone on the call today will definitely want to attend, but certainly you can reach out to me as well to invite others, because it is an invite only. So, we'd love to certainly have the group here, but we'd love to expand it as well. And we'll continue on this sharing of the InEight technology. But again, I just want to thank everyone for joining in today's session. Hopefully you found it valuable. We enjoyed being able to share with you. Have a wonderful day and take care. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.